Okay, so now that you've gone over the basics of simplifying radicals, there are different ways to write them that could complicate things, but let's take a look at it. So you've done radicals where it was just radical and some number, but now you can have numbers written on the outside. So there's a couple of ways that you could call this. You can call this 3 radical 32. But maybe the easier way to think about it when you're simplifying these radicals would be to think of it as 3 times radical 32, or 3 times the square root of 32. Because what's going to happen is that whatever answer you're normally going to get, you're just going to multiply it by 3 at the very end. And there's a specific way to do this. So let's just take a peek over here as we try to simplify 3 radical 32. Now, as far as the 3 goes, you're not going to do anything with it right now, so I'm just going to circle it for later. But what we want to focus on is the radical 32. Now, you're going to simplify this exactly how you would simplify it if that was all you had. So I'm going to split this up, and I'm going to break this down into 2 numbers that multiply to 32, with one of them being a perfect square, and hopefully the biggest perfect square that you can think of. So if you were to look at your list of perfect squares, and you look at numbers that can divide into 32, obviously 1 can, but we're never going to use 1, so you can almost just cross it out of your list because it's not really going to help you. 4 works, we can do 4 and 8. And then the other one that works is 16. So I can actually break this down into the square root of 16 and the square root of 2, because 16 times 2 would be 32. Now this works out for us because the square root of 16, which is what this says, the square root of 16 is really 4, and radical 2 would stay behind inside the radical. Now normally, if this is what you had as a problem, this would be your answer, but to begin with we had this 3 on the outside, so all we're going to do is we're going to take the other number on the outside that we have now, and we're going to multiply them. So this will actually be, as a final answer, 12 radical 2. And you can use your calculator to check again, just like we did before. So if we were to just start this problem off and we were to type 3 radical 32, it would give us an answer of 1.6. I'm in scientific mode. Let me turn that off. Alright, it would give you an answer of 16. Let's do that again. I just don't want you to get messed up. 3 radical 32 would be 16.97. Now here's the answer that you and we believe to be correct. And if it is, and we type that in, we should get the same decimal, because all we're doing is simplifying. We're not changing the value of this. So if we type this in as 12 radical 2, we should get the exact same thing, which we do. And so that's how you know that you can check to see if you're on the right path. If you think you have an answer and you're not 100% sure, go ahead and run it through the calculator. And if you get something that's completely different, then you made an error somewhere. And that's a good way for you to kind of go back and check your work and see, is there something that you did, where did you go wrong, and try to find it and correct it. So we're going to try the same thing over here with 2 radical 48. I like to circle this number on the outside so that I don't forget it until the very end. But right now what I'm really focused on is this radical 48, and I'm going to break it down into 2 numbers that would multiply to get me to 48. And if you look at it, it seems like the biggest perfect square that we can do is 16. Because 16 times 3 is 48. Now I'm doing this quicker than maybe you would, because I just know these numbers in my head, but you can also just rely on your list and just start dividing out and see which one works. Now since it's 48, you're basically just going to try to find 48 on your list, and this is 49, so this is too big. So from here up, you would just keep dividing until you find the number that works. You want to work your way from the bottom of the list to the top, because the first number that works would be your largest perfect square. So if I were to divide 48 by 36, it wouldn't work. 48 by 25, it wouldn't work. And then 48 divided by 16 would work. And by divide, I mean if you were to do it, it would be 48 divided by 16. It's a nice division. If you tried anything else like 48 divided by 25, you get something that's not nice. I'm looking for whole integers here. Okay, So 48 can be divided by 16 and 3, and then the square root of 16 is 4, and the radical 3 is going to stay inside the radical because it can't be simplified, and at the very end I'm going to take these two numbers and I'll multiply them for a final answer of 8 radical 3. Now it just so happens that sometimes the number that's in your radical is already a perfect square. This is a perfect square, so the perfect square of 25, the square root of 25, is going to be 5. So this whole part right here is really 5, so it'll be 4 times 5, and that is 20. Practice a couple on the practice sheet, on the homework, and see how you do. Use your calculator to check, and if you get the same number as you did when you started the problem, it should be alright. And if you didn't, just go and see what your errors are, try your best, come back with any questions that you may have.